So what about a completely different style of argument? So another style of argument is what we might call the moral argument or the justice argument. So here I've given this in what's called the premise conclusion format. And this is kind of a good way to structure a lot of your arguments if you can work out how to do it. There's a lot of resources online about how to give a logical argument in this format. So the way that I'm going to reconstruct this argument is to say, premise one, if there is no afterlife, then the universe cannot be just. So why would we support this idea? So it seems like a lot of, a lot of crimes that exist in the world, people never really face any punishment for. Lots of people suffer seemingly unnecessarily, and lots of people do good things and maybe don't get rewards for them. So it seems like the kind of the scales of justice that exist within the world as we live it don't seem to be super well balanced because good people do good things and don't always get rewarded. Bad people do bad things and don't always get punished. And so it seems like unless there's an afterlife with some kind of ultimate reward for all the good people and ultimate punishment for all the bad people, it seems like these scales of justice can never really be put right. It's always just going to be, whenever we die or whenever somebody dies, then that's just how it is, and the universe is not ultimately just. Premise two, then, the universe is just. Ultimately, the universe is just. And then finally, the conclusion from these two premises is going to be that there must be an afterlife. So if the universe is just, and in order to get justice, there needs to be an afterlife, and there must be an afterlife. So what should we think of this argument? So it seems like there's a really strong intuition behind premise two that the universe must be just. People seem to think this all the time. So one of the reasons why people often believe in the afterlife is this idea, as I said, that it makes sense that things would ultimately balance out. We like to believe in this kind of, whether that be karma or heaven or hell. The way that you act on Earth is going to ultimately be rewarded in some, either rewarded or face you some punishment if it's been bad. So things will eventually balance out. And this is this idea that the universe is just. But if we're going to reject this argument, it seems like premise two is probably the easiest target. So we could also try and reject premise one, but premise two seems like the kind of easier target, at least to me. So as I said, there's a strong intuition behind this, but maybe the intuition is just explaining that this is something that we want to believe rather than something that actually, with any amount of kind of evidential support. So it might be nice to think that the universe is ultimately just and all the good people will be rewarded and all the bad people will be punished. But where's the evidence for this? It seems like, at least on Earth, that's not something that really happens. Maybe it happens a bit, but it definitely doesn't happen all the time. And so if we think that this is something that's going to be a kind of cosmic principle of how the universe works, and there must be an afterlife as a result of it, we're going to have to be really, really confident that this is something that's true. And personally, I don't think that the evidence base is there to justify this idea that the universe is ultimately fair. It seems like something that's nice to believe and maybe kind of allows people to get through a bit easier, but maybe not something that's true. So some people might want to try and support this claim that the universe is just by appealing to the idea that, because God exists, the universe must be just. But it seems like a lot of these questions about the afterlife and the existence of God are kind of going to go hand in hand. And so unless we have really good independent reasons to think that God exists, it doesn't seem like we can appeal to religious support for the idea that the universe must be just. So maybe if we already knew that God exists, then this argument would be a good argument for why there must be an afterlife. But it seems like if we already know that God exists, then we've already got a long way towards answering this question. So we might think that we might want to kind of step back a bit and then think about whether this should lead us to despair. So if we reject this argument and we reject the idea that there's no afterlife, there's no ultimate justice in the universe, and there's no kind of personal afterlife such that after we die we will continue to carry on in some other sense, whether that be in our physical body or not. Is this going to be something that points to the ultimate meaninglessness of our lives? And I want to suggest that this shouldn't be our kind of default assumption. So lots of philosophers have considered this possibility. So whether that be the absence of the afterlife, the absence of God, is there still going to be any room for kind of human meaning? And a lot of philosophers have answered yes to this question. So as much as it might seem difficult to square these two things, a lot of philosophers have taken up this project and tried to give answers about how there can be meaning, even in the absence of an afterlife or some kind of ultimate justice.